I'd say always be dating, even in your relationship. Always be in that essence of like, it's a first date. I'm curious to find out something new about you.
If someone is on bad terms with every one of their ex-lovers, then I would be very reluctant to get into a relationship with them.
Welcome to the Marina Show, author of Men Need Love Too. And on today's show, we are joined by Jim Curtis, talking about love, relationships, hypnosis, subconscious conditioning, how to forgive and move on from a breakup, how to get through and manage exes when you're in a relationship, and how ultimately to get back to a place of love, centeredness, and forgiveness. Thanks for listening. Okay, so Jim, dating
Hello.
experts.
That's what we're talking about today. So what I love about this conversation is that we don't even know what we're going to talk about.
No,
So that's the
co-creating.
exciting part. That's the exciting part of what can happen in the unknown.
Very beautiful. Yeah. Creating from like nothing and just seeing what shows up and what we're meant to be talking about in this space and time now.
Mm-hmm.
So what's here
So
now for you, Jim?
what is here now for me? I guess something that I've been thinking a lot about is as I've have worked with my own clients and think a lot about is what kind of relationship that people want. Because people are going and they're constantly looking for these relationships. And they're finding that, like with one client that I have, there was a man that sent her thousands of dollars worth of flowers. And she wasn't interested in that. She doesn't like cut flowers. She doesn't like flowers at all. And she could tell that the only reason why he was sending her thousands of dollars worth of flowers, was so that he could try to win her. And she had the feeling that once he did win her, he would no longer be interested. He was just in it for the chase. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. Have you ever had that experience?
Have I had that experience? I don't know. I haven't had anyone send me loads of flowers. No, I like not
Have
in
you
a,
ever had the experience that you're just in it for the
not in a
chase?
not in a way where I would feel not appreciative of the kind gesture and overwhelmed by that. Not in a way that I'd be like, oh my God, how beautiful, how lovely, how kind. Like I would perhaps be looking at, is there some block in receiving?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just feel that's a blocked heart in some way. And for my, feeling of that. Um, and I just think it's hard for men to know what to do in so many of these situations. And if you're communicating and being open and honest with someone from when you first meet, saying what you love, and a man's asking questions like, do you like flowers? And actually tuning in rather than just watching a romantic film and thinking that's what she likes, because I think for the right person, that's beautiful. Yeah.
But do you think it has to do anything with the chase? Meaning this idea of I want what doesn't want me, and therefore I try harder. And as soon as I receive that thing, I've won it, and then that feeling of desire goes away. Do you think that, I feel like a lot of people are caught in that loop.
Of wanting that unobtainable. Lots of people caught in that loop. Do you think that's been your loop?
I think at some time, I think we all have this. So in our subconscious mind, we want to obtain something. It becomes exclusive. And so, we've all been trained that we want the exclusive thing. We want to be able to get into the restaurant or the club or the membership that is exclusive. We want to become of the few. And therefore, sometimes that bleeds over into dating where, we want only what we can't have. But I think it also has to do with our own self worth, in the sense of when we believe that we are not worthy or not lovable or not good enough, then anytime that we see someone who is praising us and available and giving, we think that they must be fools not to see, subconsciously they must not be good enough for us if they could possibly love us. Whereas the person that is hard to get or is not available or not coming forward and loving us the way that we should be loved, the way that we deserve to be loved, you know, is the right one. Subconsciously we realize that they know something, you know, because if they did know us, then they would not be interested, and therefore we want them. I think that's kind of how a lot of our brains work.
I think that's, subconscious conditioning from childhood when you haven't had secure attachment as a child and you've been perhaps made to work hard for love. So if a parent made you work hard for love and
Mm-hmm.
didn't give you unconditional love, then you've learnt from a young age that you need to work hard for love and that somehow you're unlovable. So it's retraining that subconscious conditioning, noticing the pattern, and moving towards others that reciprocate and match your energy, because otherwise you're just hurting yourself, re traumatizing yourself, and causing yourself a lot of pain. And again, it's, as you said, it's portrayed in the movies, right? And it's portrayed
Mm-hmm.
by some people that kind of sell dating programs, how to win the man, how to win how to win the girl. oh
Yep.
um the latest stuff is high worth woman, high worth man. And I'm just like, oh gosh, it's really sad, because everybody has worth, everybody has um a soul and beauty, and it's about the connection. It's about meeting someone that you can really connect with on a frequency level and creating with them, and not wasting your beautiful energy on unreciprocated people. And if you are, then it's great to look at that. Okay, what's the pattern here? How can I break the pattern? How can I be more available for love and giving and receiving that equally?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But how do you think well, in relationships, right?
Yeah.
Do you How do you think the masculine and feminine dynamic plays in? Because we are, I think there are a lot of triggers. I think we often talk about we should be open and deserving of love and ready and kind of, but on the subconscious level, there's a lot of triggers, and I think some of those exclusivity triggers, those are there, but I think we're naturally triggered and attracted to the dichotomy or the polarity of masculine and feminine. And a lot what's happening today, people are saying that as women become more masculine, you know there are less working romantic relationships. Do you believe that that is the case?
I think that you need to balance the masculine and feminine within you. And I think men, it's harder for men because there's lots of different distractions. And I think it's more difficult for them to stay in that masculinity and pursue one woman. So I wouldn't blame women for just being, I mean, look, I think we have a society where everyone's more valued for what they do, which is the masculine, right? So the masculine energy is in the doing, it's in the chasing, it's in the achieving. We're not valued so much for the divine feminine, for the being, for the nurturing, for the caring, for the love, for that energy. It's not valued, and it should be valued as one of the most beautiful, precious things ever. And yeah, for people to get consistent, and if they like someone, like, keep that person in their life, right? And not
Yeah.
just chase an end goal and get distracted. And I think that's the problem these days. Everyone's on the hustle and grind and they get distracted. And that's okay.
Have you ever been interested in a, in a, a man that's more connected to his feminine?
I would say, yeah, I was with someone that was, I think my ex. Well, I think I was probably more in my masculine when I was younger. I had a top sales job. I was working up in London. I was very much on the doing, and yeah, I think my ex-husband at some stage was more in his feminine,
Yeah.
and then I was more in my feminine, and I developed more and more in my feminine. So, you do need yeah, you do need that. Well, I need that. But everyone's different, right? And you know what? You change throughout times of your life as well. Like you might be in one stage and then you have children and everything completely shifts and you shift into a different state of being. And then, it's a dance, whether or not your partner's dancing with you and with that. And if you can reconnect and if you can have open and honest conversations around these things. So, yeah, it's interesting between the masculine and feminine. I believe you need to be balanced within you and just know what you're attracted to rather than
Yeah.
label it, oh, you're too much in your masculine. That's why I'm not attracted to you now.
I mean, that's a good point. Consciously, we're trying to figure out instead of just being really aware of what we're attracted to.
In that moment, right? And then emphasizing that, maybe expressing that and not forgetting that because I think partners can forget, like, oh, they really like this or they like that, or, and then just focus on the negative rather than being grateful for one another. And it's a less around the blame and more about appreciation and gratitude that's going to bring you back together. Like I had this thought today around relationships and I was around, I love helping men. I've wrote a book around men, but that's also to help women, right? Because if you build men up, then they're going to be able to sit with their emotions. It's this
Hmm.
whole tearing each other down in some shape or form. That doesn't work. And men need to be able to go to someone around their feelings and what's going on. And sometimes it isn't right to put all of that on your partner.
I agree. Yeah, I think that it's harder for men. Yeah, but I think in my life, it has to find a man that you could have these discussions with, has been harder to find. Although I've been very lucky to have a few, but mostly, it's very surface with my kind of guy conversations until, I give permission to get deeper with my own vulnerability, and then we start to talk about real topics beyond, you know beyond just sex, and kind of what relationships should be, what we're afraid of. I think that as men, and especially in relationships where, um, we're worried about the masculine and feminine dynamic, and we want to be masculine, and we don't think that, like we don't think that the woman wants feminine, and therefore we're not explaining what we're afraid of and what our concerns are. We're not allowing that vulnerability, and I think that's a mistake.
It's a really hard one because I think it's a really fine balance. And I think it's very difficult for men. It's very difficult for men. And so it's in an element being able to express yourself, but not in the way where you're going to not be a safe container. So it is challenging. So you want to be vulnerable and show you've got emotional depth and have emotional depth at the same time. If you're now meant to be, I don't know, a safe container and you're now not, right? For whatever reason, you're going through like illness, depression, and all the rest of it. And then you're putting all that on your partner. If I look at the dynamics, you need to be supported. You need the men's group. You need maybe another woman you can go to, which, a lot of women are don't allow that. They don't allow their partner to have other relationships. It's just them, and they're controlled. So it's important that a man can have different people, and because not everyone has a good relationship with their mom, not everyone has good relationships. So it's important that you have a wider network of people, and it is a massive challenge. I mean, when I look at my parents' relationship, when my dad nearly died, and my mum had to kind of support him, it's who was helping them as a couple.
Mm,
And it's really important to have more people supporting people that are in relationships and championing them at times when it's difficult,
yeah.
because it's just not just them, right? It's a lot of pressure to put that just on one person. So definitely. What do you
I
think's
think
been
you're.
your biggest relationship struggle?
What's been my longest relationship struggle?
Your biggest relationship struggle?
Um, I have had a number of serious relationships. I was married, we had a baby, um, and then I had another very defining relationship that lasted about 5 years. And I found that well, one, I'll tell you what I think my biggest struggle was, but something that you mentioned before is like having a woman in your life that you can be friends with and get perspective and that kind of thing. I was pretty certain for most of my life that men and women couldn't be friends. That there would always be some dynamic, which in one was, you know, wanting some sexual attraction, some sexual intimacy, and it took me a long time before I could realize that you know that was so incorrect. And now I have a number of women that I consider good friends that I would never become romantic with, or you know have sex with, and so that's changed a lot for me, and I think it's changed as I've changed. So yeah, so some of the biggest issues that I've had in my life and relationships don't happen anymore, and I think I'm in a place where I'm secure enough to have a good relationship. But so one of them would be, I remember one of my defining relationships. She had an ex-boyfriend, and they remained very close. And he became her emotional confidant, and they would see each other, and she would hide that from me. And I didn't know. I think it was probably a self perpetuating issue, meaning she would hide it from me because she knew that I would be upset. And I got upset because she was hiding it from me. And I expected that if I was in a relationship with you, that you would do me that courtesy of no longer being with your friendly with your ex. And she thought that that was incredibly obtuse of me to ask her to relinquish an important relationship because I was uncomfortable with it. And so we both had these opposing views. And I went through all my other relationships after that one thinking that if anybody has an ex-boyfriend that's still in their life, um, not for me, not for me. And then as I got older, I realized that that was my own insecurity. And if someone was to keep an ex in their life, um, there are healthy ways to do it, I think, and it's almost a sign of someone um, being emotionally mature and being able to have great conversations enough to remain friendly with someone. Now, if they had just broken up, and they are still working through issues or fighting or whatever it is, I think there needs to be a dark period of like finding out who you are before you become friends again. But so that was one of my biggest issues. How would you feel about that? Would you have any issue with that?
Yeah, I mean, for my first long relationship, I remember being envious of my ex's, last relationship. But I obviously going through my own relationship and falling out of love, and but still having love for that person. I couldn't imagine anyone not wanting to be friends with an ex. And so I wouldn't ever consider dating someone that wasn't friends with their exes, or at least one ex, because
Right?
I wouldn't, because it would just mean to me that they discard people, that they put people in roles that they don't love. Because I think true love is unconditional. You want the best for someone, you'd still want them in your life, even if it was a friend. You, if you're, I think if you're vibrating at a different level, I think if you're still in this, what can you do for me? Or you're in a lower vibration density, and you're looking at blame and them, I don't want to be involved with anyone like that. So as soon as,
Hmm.
and I would also want to know how they left the person. Like if someone starts telling me like their ex isn't doing well, or she's this or she's that, I'm like, okay, really? There's a massive saying, always leave people better than you found them. And that's in business. Like always leave everything you do in business better than you found it. And lots of men take that rule on, and say that they do this and to do that, only to turn around and say, oh, their ex-wife is this, or she's that. And I'm like, wow, that's not a general rule, right? If you've loved someone and you're in your integrity, then she should be better off than what you found her.
Hmm. Interesting. I agree that if anybody's speaking poorly about their ex, it's a huge red flag for me
Mm.
because, and if they still have a huge emotion with it, an angry emotion, then they're harboring and holding on to things. So those are huge red flags for me. But and I think that there are, if someone, well, I think there's a differentiation. So I think that if someone is on bad terms with every one of their ex lovers or boyfriends or girlfriends or wives or husbands, then then I would be very reluctant to get into a relationship with them because something goes incredibly wrong and ends badly.
So it's like looking at
And
patterns.
yes, patterns. However, that's not to say that like with your exes, you're talking every day and you wake up in the morning and then say goodnight and like they're still living in your house type of thing. I think there are boundaries with that as well. Like real emotional boundaries. But I can
Agreement.
remember,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm. Like
I can
agreement.
remember
Love it.
you're in agreement. Is that what you're saying?
No, but you make an agreements with your partner, right? So it's kind of like, as you said, if they're like texting them every 5 minutes, like before they go to bed, and yeah, I suppose you want to be that main person in their life, don't you? And feel like that. That's normal. And then it's making agreements around them things, isn't it? Like if something doesn't feel right, then you can express that. It can be heard. You can communicate. You can feel seen and heard, and you can come to an agreement moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I also believe that we hold space, right? And we hold energy. So if I'm holding space and I fill that space up with the 5 or 6 people in my life that are most important, because interpersonally, we can really manage 5 or 6 to 7 relationships well. Beyond that, it becomes fragmented. Our brains and our emotions just aren't built for it. Like we can have 100 acquaintances, but like really good interpersonal relationships between 5 to 7 people. So if I'm holding space for you as my lover, my partner, my romantic, whatever it is, and within that space, there's limited space. It's space in a room. And so you have to take something out, which is your past relationship, to have room for your current relationship, the energy of it to fill up that room. And if you're kind of like every time there's an issue turning to a past relationship, or even, yeah, well, yeah, I think that becomes an issue in my point of
Yeah.
view.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, I think um I don't think I haven't experienced that. So again, I think it's just looking at everything in the lens of love and understanding, and trying to work from there with
Yeah, I think you're
someone.
right.
I think every situation must be completely different. And it's just understanding that the more you talk about things, the more that you focus on something being a problem, the problem's going to grow. The more that you fear something, the more you're going to attract it. And
Yes.
ultimately, it's you have to give someone freedom to be them. And really, you can try and calculate these things. You can try and go, look at their past history, look at they're like this, they're like that. Okay, you might get an intuitive hit. But ultimately, if you can have honest conversations with them and you're seen and you're heard and it's from a loving space, you can only work off of that and then how you feel from that moment to moment. Because otherwise, you'll be sitting there in a room trying to find a red flag in everyone. And you will find them
You'll find
because
exactly
everyone's got
right for that.
something.
Yeah.
And so it's trusting your intuition. And then if things don't feel right, being open with that, seeing how the other person responds, seeing how you can compromise. And then if the other person starts, when abuse shows up of any sort, it's time to leave. So if they are, shutting you down, if they are not letting you be seen and heard, if they start calling you names, it's time to go, right? And if you live by that, you can't go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. But then I see so many women in particular that, they're powerful, capable, energetically big, like, well, really amazing women. And they're dating these guys that are just giving them breadcrumbs and they're head over heels for them. And they're like angry and hurt and upset that they're not getting more, but like they find themselves head over heels for these guys that are not giving them kind of that, they're just giving breadcrumbs. And I always, I always like to dig in and try to figure out what it is there that where someone can be so capable and so powerful in some areas of their lives, but when it comes to love, they're willing to accept less.
I think again it's conditioning, isn't it? And also not having that discernment, maybe letting somebody in too soon before you've actually realized. And as you said, it's everything we've talked around, having boundaries, knowing what you want to create, creating with intention. Many people don't create with intention. So what is your intention? If you want the romance story, well, then put that intention out there. That person can match you, then they can match you. And if they can't match you, then okay, bye bye.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
okay. But why would you stay in a story that's not your story only to get constantly hurt? And we're looking at childhood wounds. And that's what we're looking at through hypnosis and things like that, helping the subconscious reconditioning, because there is a subconscious wound there. If that's not what you want and that's not what your heart desires, what's the fear of being alone? What's the fear of saying no and have an empty space, right? So people say, something's
mhm.
better than nothing. No, because you're
Yeah.
betraying yourself. And if you betray yourself, don't be shocked when you get betrayed.
Well, that's powerful. That's right. I think you're right about the subconscious conditioning. And right, if you betray yourself, others will betray you. You're energetically attracting that, and you're teaching people how to treat you.
It's
But
respect.
I 100% respect. And I wonder if there are this acceptance you know of folks that aren't giving us what we want because we've kind of created a fantasy around it, and
Of
we've
course.
visualized them so many times being good that the first 2 weeks of the relationship was so wonderful and full of oxytocin and dopamine, and we saw ourselves together vacationing and all the things. And then 2 weeks in, after that, it starts to change, and it starts to change a little bit more, and we're still attached to that fantasy that we created in the first month, of what this could be, and we don't want to let go of it, even though it's not real.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think
I've
that
done that.
becomes, yeah,
I've 100% done that. Like you would even have this fantasy and you can even tell the person what you need. So I want this and this is it. And they could even do it. They could even show up. They could get you the flowers. They can do the tick list. Oh, Marina likes to text them or whatever it is. But if it's not coming from the heart, if it's not coming from the heart center, if it's not coming from a pure place of that's who they are at their core being and they like giving and they want to do it from the heart because it's part of their soul essence as well. And I'm not too sure how many men are that romantically inclined. I'm not sure, but I am. So again, if it's not coming from that place, you have to really get connected to you. So as a man, you're like, oh, I'm just going to give her this, or I'm just going to get this, or I'm just going to do that. But there's no connection to it. It won't be received. It won't be felt in the same way. And again, you might look like you've got the fantasy, but the fantasy will feel lonely and it will feel empty. And so the man has to really then dig in deep, like, how would, it's hard because what do the men receive back, in the subconscious conditioning of these romantic films? And, so
yeah,
it's pressure. It's
100%.
a lot. I understand it's a lot of pressure for men, like from their perspective. But if it's not from the heart, if it's not from your soul essence, then don't do it. And
Hmm.
yeah, and be careful around the fantasy element and making somebody into something they're not. And then holding on to the fantasy. So I've said before, a good way I've noticed that when I had been in relationships or somebody had won me over, they'd sold me on the fantasy. And it's a very old sales technique. They get you,
Yes.
they tell you like, oh, you're going to marry you. Oh, you're going to be the wife. We're going to have a child. Like, and they sell you on this fantasy. And again, it's just being, I think it's nice to have a vision with someone. I think it's nice to create together. It's nice to constantly be moving towards that, but actually see how the person is showing up by their actions and not around something they've sold you. Because it's
Agreed.
brilliant. You can really get carried away with it. And I love it. But it's great to go, actually, I really enjoy it, right? There's no harm in it. Like, it's probably like an inner child thing. We all want to get excited and imagine all these amazing things. And it's a nice thing to do with someone. But I suppose it's always remembering, like, who is this person? Are their words and actions aligning? Are they saying this but not seeing me? Like, then you're getting
Right.
played and cheated on
Yeah,
because they're
yeah,
saying all this, and obviously with someone else, they're like, "Hey, you're the wifey
yeah,
material," and they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen you." Like, so
yeah.
like, it's just being consciously aware of actions and alignment, but then also knowing, hey, it's nice to have a vision with someone. It's nice to create that. It's nice to get lost in a little bit of a fantasy sometimes. It's, your mind can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. And if you can create that with someone and it makes you really happy, how beautiful.
100%. Yeah, it's wonderful and dangerous at the same time because we get attached to it, the fantasy that we create, because, like you just said, the mind can't tell the difference. So then all of a sudden, when a month goes by and we realize that this person isn't what we hoped, then we just become, we can't let go because we're like, but in letting go of this person, I have to let go of that entire future I made real. That trip, that house, that baby, that all the things, and then I get into my head that I have to start over, and now I have to start over. And what's that mean? I have to go on a first date, and I have to put on that story and that mask again.
No masks. And I'd say always be dating, even in your relationship. It's never a first date. Always be dating. And I would even say to that, around what you're
What do
saying
you
and
mean by
around,
that? Always be dating. So even
as in,
even if we're in a
even if you're
relationship,
with someone, right? Even in you're in a relationship, Like, what is a date you can create? Like, even if you're having dinner on the floor and you've got candles, and like that's a date, right? So maybe always be in the essence of like, it's a first date. I'm curious to find out something new about you. I'm curious, even if you're in a relationship, right? So then it's never like, oh, I have to go on a first date. It's like, hey, even like with a coaching client, it's like, oh my God, like I'm just right here. I'm present. I'm listening to everything. I'm lost in your energy. Like, how amazing, right? If you can get into that energy and get into that wonder and that curiosity with people. Beautiful.
Ah, so you mean all, like making every occasion like a date, whether it's like going to lead to a relationship romantically or sexually, or like just being present and in that energy with people.
Yeah, because if you're going like, oh, I've got to go on a first date, then maybe you're not bringing, maybe you are putting on a mask because it's you're tired and it feels like energy. Well, if you're just showing up as yourself, it's going to energize you. It's not going to drain you.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
one uh, shift. And then you were talking around fantasy as well. There's another point I was going to make around this. There was
What were you going to make around fantasy?
I forgot. What was you? I got lost in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I've forgotten. What did you say? What was the last thing around the fantasy?
Well, I think that around the fantasy, yeah, I think that we have to be, it it tends to allow people to stay in relationships longer that aren't right because we've created something that becomes more real than it actually is. It becomes real in our heads and not in our realities, and then we can't break up because of it, because it's too painful to let that person go.
Oh, this is
And
what I was going to say, Jim.
yeah,
So, okay, so you get this person, they come into your life, and you get this beautiful vision, right? That you have with them, the holidays, the house. And if you can be really stay in that gratitude for that, that person has brought you that vision. Now they might be the stand-in, right? Like if you say life is like a theater, they might be the stand-in person, and that's great.
right.
You often find that that kind of happens before the person shows up because they've
Hmm.
showed you and you've co-created with them what you do want. Now they might not be able to fulfill that, and if you're consciously aware and you can step out of this and go, look, when I'm not in the presence of this person, how do they make me feel? Are they bringing me more joy and love, or are they bringing me more misery? Are they, if you're asking yourself these absolute real questions and you're getting really real to yourself, are they adding to my life or are they taking from my life? You will see. And okay, so that you had this vision and it might feel disheartening, but you can be grateful that you created that beauty and that they showed you a possibility, even though they're not the end destination. They were perfectly orchestrated by the universe to come in to show you exactly what you do want and what you don't want. And if we can move through this with love and acceptance, then everything flows more easily and we can lose that attachment quicker. And then everything just flows how it's meant to flow.
Mm.
Sorry.
Well, no, that's good. I do believe that all people come into our lives for a reason. There are people flow into, we meet who we're supposed to meet, even if it's painful, for, I believe, a greater purpose. And I always wonder, um, with most people that I meet, what that is. And I'm curious about it. So I'm constantly thinking about, what is the reason? Why is this person in my life? What are they here to teach me in some way? What experience am I supposed to have? And that curiosity, I think, is something that um, allows you to have many much better relationships.
I think it's beautiful. And I would also add to that, like, what's your intention? What do you want to create with this individual? Do they remind you of your mum, your dad? Is there anything similar? Because they might be, or have they got similar things to maybe even your grandparents? Is there something generational that's coming up? So just being really consciously aware and then creating with intention. Like, what is my intention? What do I genuinely want to create from my heart? Rather than, okay, there's a combination between the universe seeing what shows up and then also creating. So you need the balance of both
Mm-hmm.
and the flow of
Yeah.
both. Like, the universe needs
Mm.
action is my favorite quote of all times. And I think it is, so it's in that balance of everything of going, okay, I'm curious and what's my intention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think more about questions that I'm getting and issues that I'm getting with people nowadays. I feel like maybe it's just me, maybe it's just who I'm attracting, but I'm attracting a lot of people that are in pain because of relationships, and it's mostly because um, they are they're not getting what they desire, and then they're staying with the relationship, and then they finally break up, and then the partner, usually the man, comes back as the perfect mate. They come back, they want to communicate more, they want to um, do the things that they didn't. They want to be more present, they want to be more aware, they want to be more open, more vulnerable, they want to get the gifts, they want to plan the trips, plan the dinners, those kind of things. And the woman typically is convinced by that to go back into the relationship.
It's really
And
interesting. Really interesting. I don't know. I think, yeah, I've had different people that I have had come in that have, I think when a woman makes a decision to leave, normally she leaves and that's it. No amount of change can, because again, it's not authentic. It's not coming from an authentic place. This person comes back in and it's not coming from an authentic, this is in my heart's desire. It's coming because they want to win something, as you were saying. It's like the chase thing, and you're looking at the anxious avoidant attachment again, and that whole play out of that, and people still in that. It's like, okay, if something in
yep,
your intuition, your being has said to you, this isn't right, and it's got to that extreme that you've actually left, then unless that person has done a lot of work on themselves and really changed their subconscious conditioning, maybe gone deep with their emotions, processed a lot of their emotions, maybe can have some separation to find out who they are, and then you're looking at just repeating the pattern again and again and creating more pain.
mm. I don't believe that once you break up, I think that that's it. I think that getting back together again multiple times, even, or even if someone takes a couple weeks and they said, I've really changed, I've worked on myself, I've come back. Um, I don't believe that. I don't believe that, once you got to a point where you break up, there's probably some resentment, there's pain, and you've learned what you needed to learn. So I think that I tell people, if someone's coming back, especially very quickly, with acting the way that you always wanted them to act, all of a sudden, I said, I believe that that is even more proof that what the breakup was justified, meant to be. Because they would have been acting that way previously. It shows that they can act that way, and they would have been acting that way previously. Now, I think we run our course with energy. All we are is energy. We're energetic beings. And so we run our course with energy and we learn what we're supposed to learn. So even if someone comes back 3 years from now and you reunite and they've seemed to evolve, I still don't think it's right. Maybe people will say that listen to this, that have gotten back together with people after they've been apart and grown. Um, will say that I'm wrong, but I think in the majority of the time, it runs its course, and the only thing that it's our conscious mind that accepts it back. We know intuitively that it's wrong.
It's really interesting because when I look at myself and anyone that I've had in my past and it hasn't flowed and then it hasn't worked out, I've never been attracted to them to go back. But not saying that it's wrong. I would say that how I could see that ever working is if you had a separation for whatever reason. I mean, this is the thing, you can't both want to leave at the same time. You just can't. You both can't want to give up on the relationship at the same time. And if you do, well, that's it. But if someone understands the other person might need some space and they don't punish them and they still are in love and integrity and they can work through and have understanding, then I believe you can always find your way back to someone because, being in a 13-year relationship myself, being with someone, well, from my personal experience, required me to forgive them many times and not go to bed on an argument and not to hold things on and to let go and, to find the gratitude and the love in the relationship again and again and again. And I suppose it's the perspective that you hold it in. And in a timeline, you're still madly in love with that person. It still actually exists. So it doesn't ever go.
Mm.
And you choose to tap into whatever, if it's bitterness, resentment, and you choose then to block your abundance. And then you choose then to act in ways that don't serve your vibrational being. But if you can act in like, okay, well, then my heart I still will always love you, and we're not together, and we're not romantic no more, but I send you love, then you will get that back in every area of your life. Abundance will flow, relationships with other people will flow, and you won't repeat the same patterns. But it's getting to that place. And I know it can't always be easy, but I think that's the beauty of it. It doesn't, us living and dying is all happening at once. Us still being in love
Mm.
with someone is still happening. And we think that ends, and then we get upset about it and we want to, but it doesn't. If you've had them experiences, they stay with you forever. That will be in your flash. And it makes me sad to think about it because it's harder to, um, when you sit with these things, it's harder. It's easier to be like, oh, that person's this and they're that, and I'm going to call this person this name, but it's harder to go, oh yeah, I had that. But then it makes your heart grow more, and it makes you more loving and compassionate. So yeah, I think there is probably examples where two people are understanding, loving, not lying, and honest, and can give each other space and then find their way back to one another. If it's true love, if they're really in their heart chakra, which I think is very rare. If it's not about what I can get, or you're in this role and you have to be this and do this, if it's pure love, then I think yes.
Mm.
Um,
I loved what you said because I believe it wholeheartedly that if there, if in this quantum world, in this kind of quantum energy, this unlimited universe, right? That means there are infinite number of dimensions,
yeah,
and if there are infinite number of dimensions, there's infinite number of possibilities. And so if we really want to look at it like this, then it's not time and space, meaning like there is no past and future. It's just
exactly.
now.
Just
And
now.
therefore, all those dimensions, all those opportunities, and everything is happening at once now.
Yeah, yeah.
So that there is a loving, supportive relationship of that relationship is happening somewhere, and you can tune into it, tap into it, and experience it now if you want to.
And I think that's the beauty of it. I think people, when you're in lack of anything, it's unattractive. It's like when you are with someone you're in love, like everyone wants to be with you, right? And so it's just happening to that. Like you have lost nothing. If you've been in love once, that love always stays with you. If you've loved others, that love stays with you. To feel like you've lost puts yourself into a state of suffering. And vibrationally, you're going to do stuff that's true to your soul and true to you when you're in that state that you have it all, that you've received it all. It's all with you now. Because you do, in a
Mm.
timeline, you do.
Yeah, I love that. I have to go,
Yes.
but
Okay. So
that was
anything final you want to say?
no. I think that's an incredible place. That love is always there's always an opportunity for love. I think that's a wonderful place to kind of leave off that. in a timeline where everything is now and there's unlimited opportunities and potentials, there is always a potential for love.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you, Jim.